Hello, everyone. Dr. Eames here. This time I'd like to talk about women's and men's career issues. The first thing we can talk about here is that when it comes to the younger women, they do seem to be a little bit more focused on their careers and their future careers, succeeding and moving ahead than their male peers. And this is somewhat supported by the fact that they are earning more degrees than their male counterparts these days. Women are earning about 60% of all degrees. But there's also a problem with the pay gap. We've discussed many times that we compare in general all the work done by women compared to the work done by men in the same jobs. There's a huge pay gap of at least 23%, and it's varied over the years a little bit, but it's about at 23% today. And we do see that family incomes have risen because women are in the workforce. In fact, they're about 51% of the workforce these days, and that's a real change over recent times. In fact, in the last few years, the first time that women have become the majority in the workplace. And yet we only see that family incomes are up by about a third. So certainly part of the reason for that is that they are making less money overall. But it could be something to do with the number of hours and so forth. Um, Certainly women are entering the workforce in much greater numbers than men. In fact, all the men, white men and minorities and men added together don't even come close to the numbers of women that are entering the workforce. So we do see that. There are just some challenges and barriers out there that have affected women's careers for quite some time, and they're just very apparent today because they are now being talked about quite a bit. The glass ceiling, the corporate glass walls that people talk about. The original term glass ceiling was meant to talk about how women are prevented from reaching that top 5% of CEOs and presidents and so forth, which today that they still have not broken in significant numbers. So the key jobs at the very tops of organizations and the powerful companies are still largely in the hands of men, in particular white men. And so there's a clustering right there by gender, and it shows the dominance of patriarchy in our culture and so forth, and how institutionalized men's power is. Uh, Over time, we have seen that trend that women were restricted to certain departments only. And we are breaking out of that a little bit, but that's where the corporate glass walls idea comes in. It's not going upward, it's going vertical. Women end up in the HR department, or they end up doing the research, or they end up administrative support, or they can be the office manager or the middle office manager or whatever it is, but generally they become quite stymied after that in their careers. So we have corporate glass walls and ceilings, and we also have this notion of a pink ghetto. Now, a ghetto is an isolated area, generally where you assume one type of population lives there and so forth. And so really pink ghettos can be an area, a department within a company where women tend to be clustered or segregated, characterized by low pay there, mostly women, or pink ghettos could be applied to whole industries that are dominated mainly by females, and we don't see too many men, and so forth. So these are all some of the key things that women are dealing with in contemporary times as regards their careers. When it comes to men's workplace issues, they're not quite the same, but they have issues as well. And we generally do talk about the women's issues a lot and maybe not as much about the men's workplace issues. One of the biggest problems for men, the things that they have to deal with sometimes on a day-to-day basis, other times things come up from time to time, but doing the stressful jobs that are out there, the worst jobs. In fact, 24 out of 25 worst rated and most dangerous jobs, 95% are held by males. Um, and of course, this conforms to our gender roles. Men are expected to brave the hazards and do the dangerous, tough jobs. Um, and so, a traditional gender roles at play here partially. 94% of the workers who die on the job are men. And so besides the dangerous jobs, men feel that quite often that they also hold the most stressful jobs. And this is all because of our patriarchal society. Now, when it comes to holding protector jobs, that again is a traditional gender role that men are protectors. And certainly men have paid the price in wars, although that has changed in contemporary times somewhat. But over time, certainly men have been the ones who have been killed in greatest numbers of wars. That's not to say that women haven't been killed and so forth. The traditional gender role says that men assume the role of protector, and valuing that protector role, maybe a little bit too much, can result in violence, in police violence. It can result in brutality and domestic abuse. It can result in militaristic thinking and gang-like thinking and so forth if we push these sort of gender roles too far. And for some men on the fringes of behavior, certainly that does happen. Some men do feel like they're losing power. They're not only losing their personal power, but overall, just as a gender, they are losing power. For some men, it is a very confusing time. They are having a harder time, for instance, making a living than their fathers did. This is the most recent couple of generations are generally starting to feel that they can't do as well as their parents did in life. And that is different in American culture than we've ever felt before. So they're losing that power. They're trying to figure out where do they fit in, and really, what do women want? Um, Men might live in a more violent world than women, although I think that was something we could really argue about because women certainly have to endure a lot of abuse and so forth. But there's no doubt that some men do feel threatened by the rise of feminism and so forth. And we have some other uncomfortable statistics that unemployed men are often driven to commit suicide at twice the rate of employed men. So there's a lot of pressure out there, pressure to perform, pressure to change with the times, pressure to succeed in careers, and pressure still to provide for families. They still Men are often expected to be strong, courageous, and protective. That's the problem with gender roles and stereotypical thinking. They create expectations, and when you don't meet the behavior, it is not always doesn't always work out well for you. Um, Today, some men do struggle trying to make sense of their gender role and deal with stereotypes and so forth um, that don't seem to make sense in today's world. Dealing with women managers. Some men simply have a real problem here. Uh, there's no doubt that many men work better around other men, than they do around women. Uh, and it Part of it is that many men have trouble understanding what a female manager wants. So again, we have this interplay of traditional gender roles to put so much pressure on people to behave in a certain way, to think in a certain way, and do certain things. And it can be very confusing when it seems that the equation has changed, but the demands of society have not changed. And so men have a little bit of difficulty trying to figure out where a female manager might be coming from and so forth. They're just not thinking the same way as a male. And many men tend to become fixated on the personality traits of their women managers and so forth. They want to make constant comparisons and things like that. And we've already talked how there are such different styles of communication and leadership in each of the genders. And finally, when it comes to men's workplace issues, trying to balance career and family needs and really is a challenge in the face of having to conform to the norms of traditional gender roles that society wants you to do, emulate and so forth. Men are frustrated. They often feel trapped in that provider role. So men are more likely than women to relocate to an undesirable location or to work undesirable hours simply because it's part of the things that drive them to be the protector and the provider. Um, but we do see changes today. Men are getting a little better at balancing their work life sort of equation. They're spending more time on childcare. They are helping out more with home chores and doing more of the home the chores at home, the housework, and things like that. So these are all issues that everybody will recognize in the workplace. And as a manager, you have to be aware of what those issues are, see them when they're there, and it will help you make best decisions as you deal with people. Okay, folks, that's all I want to talk about this time. I'll talk to you again soon.